Oh boy, oh man, oh man, oh boy. Don't you just love it when you try to do a thing, but the thing don't thing as well as you thought it would? So you end up feeling very unthinged over the whole thing? Well, that's pretty much what happened to me and wanting to do a series on the Simple series. If you don't know what that is, the Simple series was a series of lower budget titles developed for a variety of consoles, typically selling for about 10 to 20 bucks on average. Most of these though were really shitty sports and or poker games, and the far greater half of them were never even released outside of Japan either.
Or so I thought.
As the rather infamous Italian publisher and possible money laundering scheme 505 Games took it upon themselves to shoot these games all over my PAL regions and my PAL regions alone. Not sure why, as it doesn't seem at all profitable unless, you know, the mafia was involved somehow. Or maybe they just did it for the love. In any case, I figured that it would be cool to cover a bunch of these games, and so I picked up a fucking shit ton and went on my merry way. I even tried Japanning up the titles big time, thinking that that would make them stand out like tumors and give me hella clickbait potential, but after about 2 vids, I changed my mind and decided that instead of a full-on series, I'd review only a handful in one video every so often and go full documentary mini-review retrospective on thine asses. So yeah, I already talked about 2 of these games individually. One being Street Boys, which is some of a Yakuza ripoff slash box standard Japanese Yankee tale with surprisingly fun gameplay. And second, the legendary The Sniper 2 Bullet of Nightmare, which is easily my favorite. Not because it was particularly good or anything, but because A, the soundtrack was banging, and 2, the story is still one of the funniest fucking things I have ever willingly sat through. So much so in fact that myself and 2 other honorary members of the Sniper 2 fan club, being Jedi Master Jay and Frankie Review Show respectively, once sat down one morrow to discuss the game and also what the fuck the Sniper 1 would actually be. So after I did some research, I got myself a totally legit copy and it's actually somehow better. I'm gonna explain why in a little bit, but first, check out this sexy game over screen. This game is like all the aesthetic memes in one glorious basket. Much like the sequel, its art and audio teams were fucking on point. Soundtrack-wise, even more so, as it's considerably less hokey. Unlike the Sniper 2, it isn't voiced by swamp creatures from the Boglands and instead remains in its sultry, well-acted moonspeak, which I am 100% down with. And as far as the gameplay goes, it's pretty much literally exactly the same fucking game. Meaning that each level has 1 or 2 objectives like shoot guy or find guy and then shoot guy. And after these have been explained to you in utmost detail, you get to pick a squat spot and the time of day, after which you awkwardly fumble about with the D-pad to walk, use L1 and L2 to look up or down, bring out gun with square, and finally shoot using R2. As you can tell, this is a very intuitive and totally normal control scheme that isn't at all abhorrent in the slightest. What it lacks in comedic value, it makes up for in pure, unadulterated, noir-drenched, late-night, holy shit, what the fuck is this, my boner tier atmosphere. And the reason that it's a much better game, specifically, is because of the controls being much tighter. In the Sniper 2, for instance, aiming is not fun because they added physics into the equation. Wind, distance, height, all mattered, yet the game never showed anything that would hint at this being the case. Add to that the fact that these character models are easier to distinguish than the somewhat muddy PS2 variants, and that overall the game feel is a lot less rigid. It's almost passable, yay! Still rather tedious with how you're only allowed one shot and with how trying again takes a hot minute, but it's still entertaining enough for what it is. Had I spent 15 bucks on this as a Japanese child, I don't think I would have been disappointed with my purchase. But that's just one of the more obscure titles. Surprisingly enough, this doomed to shovelware series ended up spawning some series of its very own, like Bust a Move, Densha de Go, and Earth Defense Force. The first still being the only arcade game my millennial ass has ever experienced, alongside Dynamite Cop, the Die Hard Reskin Edition, and that one pod racing game. The second is a franchise I've always wanted to try just because of the aesthetic value alone. And the third is something I have yet to touch. Yeah, I know. EDF! EDF! I'm sure I'd love it and I'll totes try it at some point, but more relevant to this video is the titular Onechanbara series. That, in a weird twist of fate, has seen some coverage overseas, only then typically under a bit more, creative names. These games are supposed to be Devil May Cry-like being applied with giant fucking quotation marks here, series of action games starring big-breasted vampire chicks fighting rotting zombie dicks. Naturally, they're about as competently put together as the American political system, but with heads held up high, Tamsoft actively kept ripping shit off and improving with every subsequent release, eventually leading up to Onechanbara Z2 Chaos. A game that is somehow actually decent and fun enough for a low-budget Bayonetta clone. Not great, of course, but let's just say that the quotation markers were definitely a bit smaller. The same, however, can't really be said for the first game. Retitled to Zombie Zone and released only in Japan and Europe, the original Onechanbara is not very good. After the game is started, you are greeted by an unpromisingly silent title screen, which of course prompted me to drop my controller and write down what it just said due to its high comedic value. But as I was doing that, the attract mode started playing, which made me even more reluctant to play. No background music, clipping zombies, the AI and/or demo player sucking horribly, it did not look great. But when I finally pressed start and entered the game proper, all lubed up and raring to go, I was actually quite pleasantly surprised by the scathing mediocrity at display here. Mechanically, it works just like Z2 Chaos, where you have a standard brawler-style combat system with sword-based attacks mapped to the square button, melee combat slapped on my triangles, and it also does that whole blood thing where as you kill Zams, your weapons will get bloodstained, and so you need to take a timeout to wipe off said blood when the blood bar is full. Unlike Z2 Chaos though, the game moves very fucking slowly due to laggy inputs, and before I know it, I stopped being mildly impressed. Honestly, the only thing it really has going for it is that your character gets completely drenched in blood to the point of dripping, which is really cool and adds to the potential viscerality. But amidst all of the blandness, it's kind of a moot point. This is one of those games where they might have some decent ideas, all of which make the later games worth your while, but because of the boring level design, repetitive featureless music, and the no fun story or characters or cutscenes, it falls flat as a whole. The entire thing is just zombies after zombies after zombies who literally do nothing other than slowly lumbering towards you and only slightly increase in numbers as the game goes on. As enemies in a hack and slasher, they are beyond fucking boring. Add to that, confusing, badly thought out levels with nothing but bland corridors, locked doors, and key hunting with little to no direction, and you end up with a game that I could not bring myself to finish. In fact, I never even got past the very first level. Eat my dick. Fuck this game.
So, how are we going to sell this to a hip young market?
Well, we could neon it up a little, make it play a bit faster, add some music, turn it into a really fun, engaging, pure hardcore experience like the one Pac-Man thing. Right? Set within the cold, dead, urban Burman apocalypse of long drawn-out cutscenes, Space Invaders is about invaders from space invading planet Earth from space. Oddly enough, this actually did make it over to American shores, where it was retitled to Space Raiders. My box, though, has it listed as Space Invaders Invasion Day, and in Japan, they called it Dashikyu Shinryokugen Space Raiders, which I think translates to Earth Invasion Group Space Raiders. When I dropped this into Google Translate, it automatically added cheeky tildes to the title. I'm okay with this. But yeah, this is a modern, gritty reimagining of the arcade classic Space Invaders. And dear God, is it a bunch of fuck. Unlike any other simple game that I've ever seen, it manages to give off a higher budget impression with its opening Tekken 3-tier cutscenes. There's action, big boobages, dramatic army madness, more big boobages, and it legitimately nails that PS2 Japanese wannabe Hollywood vibe that doesn't work at all but somehow ends up being quite hype in its own right. Then the game starts, and you remember that it's fucking Space Invaders. So you run from side to side, aggressively spamming shoot button, and occasionally step or roll out of the way to avoid some bullets. You also have shmup tier AoE grenades, and everything more or less checks out, I guess. What is weird is that the dodge rolls are a lot slower than simply moving aside, lack any form of iframes, and also take away your ability to control your character while the animation plays. Meaning that you have a pretty big risk of flinging yourself at a projectile and taking unnecessary damage. It's still kind of fun though. Much like the original, it is very basic, or should I say simple. But the incoherent chaos, beefy sound effects, and the noisy screen-clearing explosions are neat enough. It's all a bit repetitive perhaps, and also just pretty unremarkable all around, but should you ever find yourself in a shovelware concentration camp, then you can certainly do a whole lot worse. I mean, there's like actual enemy types, like these flat jumpy dudes who can only be hit mid-jump, or plant vagina monsters who can't be hit upon the closing of gob. And the power-ups are also kinda neat, including staples like the
heavy machine gun,
a time-stopping device, and uncontrollably fast walking mode. It's pretty okay, and paired with the fact that you have infinite continues, it kinda turns the game into a shit version of what a gallery shooter Metal Slug could play like. Military alert! Military alert! The scrolling text exclamates whilst providing no audio whatsoever for a full fucking minute.
Great start.
Apparently, there's some type of war going on, and the only one up for the task is a mechanical cyber doll found in an old Taito construction site, whatever the fuck that means. And this cyber doll stars in a game called Dragon Sisters, in which she walks from left to right, uses the very same standard beat-em-uppy controls you know and love, and actually handles pretty well, almost maybe. I wasn't sure exactly how to feel at first, but the moment I jumped up, kicked, and saw just about a dozen robot dudes frantically spinning through the air, a smile appeared upon my face. As far as side-scrollers go, though, it's pretty uneventful. You don't hang from rockets, you don't control vehicles, and you certainly don't take down any Nazi mecha death machines. Instead, it's one of those games that makes the mistake of having way too many spongy enemies. No box standard basic bitch grunt should require an 18-hit combo to die, especially when there's hundreds of them. So it's almost a good thing then that this game has some pretty cool mechanics revolving around these here bullets that you can recharge on the spot by pressing R2. What these do is trigger a variety of special moves with circle. Doing this whilst violently mashing Lame and Illuminati, for instance, results in a cornucopia of crazy shit, like kickflips, random explosions, and laser beams from the butt. It's almost good. Almost. I mean, there's decently fun and satisfying combat with an ability system that uses the souls you acquire by killing dudes to upgrade your stats and buy new combos, and you keep your souls upon death as well, thus making each repeated run of a level easier due to you getting stronger. But there's no actual game to support any of it. Every single level is just a straight line, nor do the enemies really do much of anything. It very much sits in the zombie zone, where it feels more like a quick and easy gameplay demo made to showcase the basic idea behind the combat's mechanics to a publisher, but literally nothing more than that. The enemies suck fucking dick, have way too much HP and barely even touch you, and worst of all is that it also physically hurts to play due to it requiring the dreaded Tekken Claw Hand. Despite these games clearly being very hit or miss, I do generally find this shit quite interesting and fun to talk about. And where I don't think that I'll be doing full reviews for any of these shits anytime soon,
My boy Hikiko has you covered right there, nudge nudge wink wink.
I do plan on turning this into a series of sorts. I mean, besides being rather PlayStation-centric, the simple series also bled on over into Wii, DS, GBA, and even PSP territory, so I might look into those as well. Oh, and I also have a Japanese PS2 now, so I don't just have to stick to what was brought over here.
Pandora's box has been thoroughly opened,
Shit's gaping!
and I'm ready to dive in head first.
It's like a game about anime girls being eaten alive by giant bugs, I guess. I don't know, but I'm already looking forward to covering this.